This is Greg McLaughlin of the Rebel Base Card Podcast, and you are listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast with Ian Taylor. Enjoy collecting.
Hello everybody, my name is Ian Taylor and you are listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast, your weekly digest of hobby goodness. With me from the dark side of the Force is guest host and friend of the podcast, Greg McLaughlin of the
Hello.
Rebel Base Card Podcast. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me on. It's been a couple of minutes since we had a chance to chat. And,
Just a little.
I've been looking forward to it.
Just a little bit. Well, it's oh my goodness, time flies when you're having podcast fun. When's the last time we actually did we do anything last year? I know we opened some swag packs that you sent me. But I you know what? I have a feeling that might have squeaked into the late part of 2021. I don't remember.
Sounds more right.
Yeah.
And because the pandemic really, it's interesting that we sort of, bookend the pandemic, and then our world's changed a lot. There was the before times, and then there was the crazy during, and then I think a lot of this is picking up the pieces of what the hell happened to cards.
I'm laughing because in your dulcet tones, I thought you were going to say it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. You were going to get all Dickens on me.
No, I could probably use him to help write some stuff for the website, but yeah, it's been nuts. And, one thing that's been really fascinating is to kind of like hear the MCC as of late. And then, I think when you were talking about, the different stages of collecting and things like that, it took me forever to get through some of those episodes because every 5 minutes I'd turn it off and I'd sit there and just my mind's just racing because I'm feeling the exact same way. I'm feeling like, as I've been going through, and I think, everybody hits the wall, the space and everything else. And you go, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then in the meantime, you're trying to figure out your entire game while all this nonsense is going on around, and blowing up. And you're just like, wait a minute. I was doing a friendly little thing on cards and collecting and talking to that. And then everything else went on. And in the meantime, I'm trying to figure out, how do I want to do this? I have enough cardboard to last me several lifetimes. How do I do this? And so I think those 3 episodes, which, to me are a high watermark for our kind of work, just really sort of like, and I have some piles in front of me of, been going back into the archives and figuring out. And I think when you rediscover, like I said, this is a summary of a larger discussion we're having.
Yeah.
But I think the last couple of weekends, I've really enjoyed going back in and rediscovering it and then helping focus a little more, what has been, a shotgun approach. And then as trying to produce content, I do eventually get around to talking about cards on my card podcast. Trust me, I do eventually do that. It's interesting because everybody is sort of along for the journey, and this has not been, it's not been linear. I don't think it's been crazy, but that's why I was really happy when you reached out, and it was nice to kind of catch up. Not only that, but just kind of unpack a lot of this. I think is what we're doing. Is I'm literally unpacking cards and in front of me. I'm just trying to figure out where am I going, Ian? That's the thing. I think that's why I'm here. Yeah, and have you tell me what I'm going to do. What am I doing? What am I going to do, Ian?
If your heating bills are a problem, then you've always got something to burn. No, I should never say that on a card podcast because people all over are literally going. So I think for those who might not know what Greg's referring to is our first 3 episodes of the year were the state of the hobby, as we rather arrogantly decided to call them. Was simply just came out of nowhere, just some idle kind of ruminating over the Christmas downtime about collecting and about what phase you're at as a collector and kind of what pressures, I think is probably the fairest way to say, are on that journey, which affect, and make it not a straight line. It's not going from A to B. Yeah, if I knew what my B was, having come from A, then I think I'd have probably chosen a slightly different path in some ways. But the reason I got to that headspace was, people have heard me talk about the fact that I had almost 4 years worth of stuff that had been, when I dived into EPAC and I was collecting stuff, but I didn't have any of it. It was all just kind of on a screen somewhere else. Even though it was a physical card, digital cards a whole other ball game. And I know you're very much into the card trader app for Star Wars, but having all that arrive and actually still, having boxes of it, literally like boxes of it here to sort through. And it started out, and I had almost 40 of these. I'm probably down to about 5 or 6 left to sort through. And it kind of makes you, kind of take stock, which I wasn't expecting. It's like, well, actually, now I've got some of these. Are they what I wanted? Now that I've got them, do I still feel the same about them seeing in the flesh? And 90% of the cards, I can happily say yes. In fact, a number of them exceeded my expectations. And you'll know this feeling. When you own a card and you just hold it, and it's like, you just get joy from the fact that you own it, and you just really enjoy looking at it. Is that kind of feeling? So there's a number of cards that do that. But equally, there are a couple of things that I really worked at and collected and got a lot of them that I'm probably like, yeah, I can pass that on almost straight away. So that's an interesting journey to go on. So tell me what's been the journey of Greg in terms of Star Wars cards and the podcast, I guess, over the last year. Where have you found the winds blowing you from and to?
A very big event for me last year was bringing my secondary job to a close after 13 years, and it was time. I'd cleaned up as much as I could, and I really wanted to see, can I really do this? Because when you have multiples, it's usually for a reason. But some of that was less so. And I think as I got a little older, and you're going, what, I think it'd be better if I kind of wound this down a little bit, because I'd been doing the podcast and, collecting, during it at a decent clip, but every now and then you'd sort of run into the wall, and you'd have times and you could look at you going, okay, I'm getting a little tired, or, it's a lot to keep up, especially with, Star Wars Celebration and all that last year and a lot of the shows, and having some fun with the breakfast ones where we did a lot of the shows, which you usually skip over because you either haven't seen them yet. You're going, well, thank you very much, and I would say now the little spoiler alert is purely because I keep thinking there's a little Ian in my head going, hey mate, I haven't seen it yet. Please let me know what you're going to be talking about, and even doing it better, like now, like labeling it on there. This is a episode discussion.
Yeah.
And
so for those who don't know, sorry, I'm going to assume, because we do have some new people. So basically, what you do is that you do your regular, the Rebel based card podcast is your show, and that's been going for what, 4 years now, almost 5.
Yeah, it'll be 4 exactly in March of this year when I started. So yes.
Okay, good. And that's obviously talking about Star Wars trading cards and artists, and but you've branched out and talked about other areas of fandom, like people who make acrylic cases, and things like that. Yeah,
all kind of stuffs.
But you've kind of got a side quest, kind of an offshoot, where you do shows where you're talking about the episodes of new content that are coming out. So you've done them for the Bad Batch. What's that, Batch for Breakfast?
Yes, yeah, I've made it really hard to figure out what they are, but I would say that I consider them an insert. Right, of keeping it cards.
Yes,
I have the base show.
They're a chase set.
Of an insert. It's an insert series. We started with Bad Batch, and we called it Batch for Breakfast, and then it kind of morphed into we did a little bit on the Book of Boba Fett. We did Kenobi because my co-host Gregory Cass from Ion Canon is a huge Kenobi fan.
See, I can now listen to those too. I'd forgotten that you did those, because I watched Book of Boba Fett, otherwise known as Mandalorian season 2.5. and I've watched Kenobi. So those two I can do. I haven't yet seen Andor, but what was the Andor title?
Oh, questions and or breakfast was that one.
It's like
Um,
it's so you must have such a difficult time shoehorning the breakfast theme into the show.
it it's come to the point where I think I'm just going to be referring to them as breakfast packs, and so we're going
Okay,
to open a breakfast pack as opposed to a base pack,
right.
because once again it ties back into not only how you collect and what you do going forward, but as you evolve as a podcaster going.
Mm,
I like this. It introduces me to another audience. I
mm,
enjoy my sit downs with Greg. It's really fun, and
mm.
then we actually had a chance to meet at Celebration last year and do the Celebration breakfast shows while we were, like after we would actually have a physical breakfast.
Oh wow, okay.
And then we started talking about, like, for example, the Mandalorian and Bad Batch will overlap, as I cross myself, for a few weeks, and that's going to be murder. Um, and then later on this year, I do believe we're going to do Ahsoka. And I think by that time, I think it'll just be breakfast pack as
Yeah,
opposed
okay.
to trying to, because I think what was the one? Oh yeah, the Kenobi one was Leave the Breakfast, Take the Kenobi. I think was the title of that show. Now, because it's going back a ways now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was after a while. You're like, you're not helping anybody out, including yourself, doing a lot of this.
I
But
do quite look forward to seeing how you're going to do it, though. It does make me laugh. But they're an interesting one for you because that's you've the Rebel Base card you've always done as a solo thing.
mhm.
You've obviously had guests on, but typically speaking, it's you. Whereas the breakfast ones are always you with other people. Is that right? Is that more than one of you?
Yeah, Greg and I started off, and then what we try to do to keep it fun is, like, if there's a conflict, there's a number of people I can bring in. Sometimes it's fun, like we just recorded one with Carl Leclerc from Wampa's Lair, because everybody kind of ends up knowing everybody after a while. And
Yeah.
so we did a podcast day special. I know this may come out a little later, but where we had a number of people on. We had Jen Subchakchai from The Long She Writes a Substack, Ross Holleben from Fantha Tracks, Frank Mulder, Mr. Daft Ron. He's another collector and friend of ours and part of this group. And it's nice because you can bring people in. We ended up doing a lot of the Mandalorian trailer for podcast day. And it was nice because you get a great diversity of views
Mm,
and things can bounce off, and you try to keep it light. Like, I can't be some of those podcasts that can go 2 hours on a topic. I can go 2 hours, trust me, that's not a problem. But with the knowledge and the depth that they have, and to
yeah, yeah.
give a listener, right? I often go over an hour, but I would, like I said, unless you want to listen to me drone on, but having that cadre of people, and I think even the folks that you have had on, it's we can do so much. We can do what we can do, and by the length of by longevity, we can bring a lot to the table. But when you bring a lot of expertise in and an opinion and just really good people, it's amazing what you get. And
Mm,
that's been the fun part, and that's something I don't want to let go. But then you start to kind of go back, just kind of like when you're looking at your collection, going, all right, I'd like to kind of help my audience figure out what are they listening to,
yeah.
and why, and how am I going to go about doing this, and what can I do to be a better version of me in this space. So
Mm,
labeling it, coordinating it, and what I've been trying to do is mix it in, because you've seen times where, just because of time, I can do one or I can do this,
yeah.
and I've tried this year to try to mix it. I think I'm mixing a little too much in, but I'm trying to find that balance. And like anything else, you go until you go. And I'm just really blessed that it is people that have gone along this journey with, um, I'm comfortable with what my audience is. I'd love to see it grow, but I'm not, I pay attention to it mainly just to keep an idea of, am I doing what I need to be doing? And are there things I could do
Yeah.
better? And like I said, and then, having the diversity of content goes back in, because as someone who does Marvel cards, they don't come out every week. They, EPAC, yes, you can have releases, but physically you have a few. And so you want that
Or
breath in
even every
between,
year,
or every
given
year.
the drought that we're just coming out of. Yeah.
But you want something, you like that space in between if you want to go into a topic and you don't
Mm,
feel like you're doing a disservice. Um, And then also, I think it gives you time to take pause and
Yes.
really feel. And like I said, that's been the thing I've really taken away is, like anything else, everybody has now a large collection. If you're in this collecting game, I don't care whether it's toys, cards, comics, books, what have you, everybody can just turn around and go, wow, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
And how do I do it? Why am I doing this? I think there was a question that was asked recently, as you see a lot of folks that have come into our hobby and talked about, are you coming in? Here's some advice. And I'm like,
Mm,
the one question that drives me nuts that no one's asking is why? Why would you want to collect? Ask yourself that.
interesting. Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
else, everything else comes right after that. And then you can figure out. But if you don't have the why down, if you're just doing it because it seems cool and people are getting into it, by all means go to it. But when the heating bills come in, I hope you can pay for them.
Mm,
I can pay
that's an
for mine.
interesting one. Yeah, that's interesting. It's so bizarre. You're drinking a space mug because your background masked out the mug. That was hilarious. It
Mm,
was kind of in that sweet spot where it was just like I could see your hand. The mug was the space
I know.
background. Anyway, um, no, it's interesting. We've never really kind of talked about the why of collecting. Um, yeah, that's wow. Okay, yeah, you've slightly blown my mind. Then it's kind of one of those existential moments where you're like, yeah, okay.
Why?
Why? Why are we here? Why are we here, Greg? Um, it's I tell you the challenge that I've had, and obviously, up until recently, I did have input into this, but the challenge I've had is that I've always wanted to try and. There's a number of ways we could have gone with the podcast. We could have gone the way of kind of like breaking news. This is what's happening in the scene at the moment, yada
Mm-hmm.
yada. And we did try and do that for a little bit. Um, and just because we weren't able to be as immediate as some of the content creators now seem to be, they're like literally some of these guys, they're in their car and they'll just record something and get it up. It's like I can't do that. My life doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I honestly don't know where some of these guys find the time. Um, so we kind of figured, we just want it to be like a resource for people. But over the last year, we've certainly found. I certainly feel that we got a little bit, maybe too introspective, a little bit in terms of the hobby because everyone was kind of feeling it. It's like because of the
Mm-hmm.
shock of the kind of the market booming and then having a little jolt, and now obviously with the economy and everyone seems to be a little bit more annoyed about stuff. So we kind of what I want to get back to is kind of doing the more looking at some of the older stuff and getting some of those oral histories, on tape, as it were. And there's a number of people that we're going to be speaking to, that I'm going to be speaking to, hopefully on that front over the coming months. But it's difficult because you kind of realise that you actually want to be, as well as doing something for you to enjoy. I kind of want this to be a good resource for people. I want people to be able to listen to it and actually get something from it. So bless your heart for for saying what you said about the state of the hobby trilogy, because that was just completely like unplanned. It was like an unplanned thing that just organically happened, and then all of a sudden, once we got the vibe of it, the rest of it fell into place. But the good thing about that is that almost all of it was content driven and generated and discussion driven and generated by questions asked of the community, because we're fortunate to have that group resource, and we can just say, look, this is the next, I put 3 posts up and asked 3 questions, and the feedback from those questions shaped, okay, this is what the feedback from people is, the state of the hobby. Now admittedly that's a very small proportion of people out there who probably collect Marvel cards, because don't I know it, that not all Marvel card collectors choose to be in the group that I happen to have spawned. A lot of people don't, hang their social media hat in that group, and some people spread themselves across multiple groups. Some people absolutely detest the group and this podcast and me, and do their own thing, which cool in the gang. Here's an interesting question on that, because I've always found this interesting. Do you have that kind of weird? I've said weird, and I've kind of almost prejudiced it by saying so. But do you have that kind of different encampment mentality within Star Wars card fandom. I don't get the vibe you do. It all feels very crossovery and very friendly and working togetherish.
I think it's because I don't choose to be outside. I am part of groups.
Mm.
I'm part of groups, and I tune back in. But I think one of the things is I think because when you're a content creator, I'll put that in quotes for myself. I try to, a lot of the free time I didn't have to go in, and I did like interact. And I like a lot of the people in those groups, and they really help out
Mm.
a lot. It's a lot, it's a lot to manage, and my hat's off to anyone who has to admin, because you're trying to keep it a space where it's like, things, you know, people just get there's more and more people going in, and it just gets a little nutty, and then feelings get hurt, things get, because it's text, and you can't talk like we can,
Yeah.
and hear the inflection and what someone's trying to say, and then someone comes into a group and goes, hey, what's this worth, or what's this, and then you get the pylons and all that. And so although I try to keep an eye on it, and I like it because a lot of the artists are in there as well.
Mm.
I tried to figure out that I thought maybe my Venn diagram position would be in, instead of being inside a group, being sort of like on the peripheral and talking to folks who
Yeah. Yeah.
don't, who are Star Wars fans, do collect, have that, especially that tie back to vintage or whatever came out when they are,
Mm.
and have no idea. And I thought that was to me, a more interesting opportunity
Yeah.
to that, because I'm like, I'm not an expert. I have history and age on my side, but there are a lot of folks who dive more into this and buy more and do that. But
Mm.
there is, you've talked about it a lot, about the competition and how that can drive for good or bad. When people are just trying to show off, um, what they have, but it's hard not to look at that and have that not impact you. Yes, it's a cool card, it's really great, wow, I love the detail on that, but then you go, man, should I be buying cases? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it? And so to kind of keep your foot in there. But so I don't know if I would serve a group as well, because the news and things, sure, a review on it as a longtime collector, helpful. But as
Mm.
far as like inside that, but I don't mind operating solo in some cases when I do,
Yeah.
when I talk about this,
Mm.
because I can kind of do what I would prefer, and kind of go the way. And I think when we talked about the evolution of myself as a collector, I'm taking a different journey. And so, my journey may not be where other folks would care for it to go. Like, oh,
Mm.
they want to look at this particular thing. And I'm like, well, you know what? Now I'm really focused. I don't think any of the major collectors would really, you know, the recent kick was these cards that came on the packages of Eggo waffles.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Been out for a year. I have talked about it. I've got a larger show that I'll be building around it. But for me, it was a fascination ever since, a few of them came into my hands, and I'm like, yeah, it's been out for almost a year. And it took me on a merry chase. And I'm like, which was the best ever. Kellogg's literally called me a couple days ago because I emailed him. I'm like, I got to know
Wow.
about this. And, some poor customer service rep reached out first by email and then by a phone call. I think I've got another follow up because I want to try to get, because when you've talked about promo cards and futais and
Yeah.
things, this is an opportunity to get as much information before a lot of this is lost.
Mm.
It becomes something
Exactly.
that, like the episode one stuff or the solo stuff, after a while you start to figure, I'm going off on a tangent, because we're getting so much content. What really makes the next thing special? What's going to grip the non-huge audience, like a Mandalorian, Baby Yoda,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
the Avengers and the MCU and all this stuff. We are getting bombarded with incredibly well-written, good content. But what's going to make the next thing for Marvel special? It's like
Mm.
Black Panther was an amazing, groundbreaking film. You know, the follow-up made a lot of money,
Not
but
seen
what
it
really
yet.
makes what makes these things, what really clicks when there's so much content. And that's the same thing. So it's like I don't mind going down on that journey, on that journey,
Mm.
with the cards that you could cut off the boxes of Eggos. I enjoyed them, and my friend ate a lot of them. He bought a lot of boxes
Oh
to help
really?
me out. And I still have Eggo. I'll be eating Eggos for a couple more weeks at
We
least.
don't have them over here. I've no idea what they taste like.
It's a waffle. It's a really good waffle. If you've ever had a waffle, if you ever had a Belgian waffle, I mean, imagine on a smaller scale.
Okay.
Um, but I was always a big fan of waffles, and I better be because I've eaten quite a lot of them. But when you have them all, when you find out, when you realize that there wasn't a checklist, and you don't know how
Oh,
many
okay.
cards there were, and you're like, who's going to ask? I didn't see anything online. I'm like, you know what? This is my
That's
calling.
interesting.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
I have this is my calling. I've got to find out the answer to this, and it was so much fun. And the story's not done yet, so I'm not. I haven't put a button on this, but I do want to do a write up. I've got a lot of pictures. I'm going to be sent some boxes from Kellogg's. But it's just one of those things where you're
I
like,
love it.
this is where the journey took me,
I love it.
and I didn't realize it. But I'm like, yeah, I don't feel guilty, but I also feel at one time it's like this is what we should do. It's
Mm,
like finding a promo set for that Marvel did, that obscure thing that they put on a box of laundry detergent, and you
yeah.
go, you know what? If no one talks about this, it's going to be on Jeff Allender's card. As much as a great resource as that
Mm,
House of Checklists are, that's what it could be, or it could be lost to time.
yeah.
And a collector may, because some of this stuff may last a little while, going, you know what was that all about? I saw this. Hey, what's the deal? But also as a collector, you go, I gotta have them.
Well, of course. Yeah. Well, it's the whole Pokemon thing. Got to catch them all.
Mm. I don't
Um,
know what the original question was, but
no,
yeah.
do you know what? I don't know if there was a question really. It was no. It was basically about whether or not. Because the thing I find is that in Star Wars, I've talked about this before. I always find it interesting that the fandom has people who are interested in this, people who are interested in that, and they all kind of get on and
Mhm.
they connect. And there's, I've seen that in your podcast, the fact that kind of stretches out. With Marvel cards, it's different. There wasn't really. Obviously, there's been places over the years like there's the Scoundrel Forum if you're into your sketch cards, and there's Blowout for a little while, and there's Card Talk on the non-sport update magazine, which is kind of more of a general trading cards place. There's obviously people in there who collect both Marvel and Star Wars and all sorts of other stuff like wacky packages and garbage pail kids and stuff like that. But there wasn't really anywhere. Facebook is the first place I've seen dedicated spaces for Marvel cards per se, not just sketch cards, but just Marvel cards. And so I found it can be a little bit tribal is probably the best word to use it. And I wasn't sure if anything like that had existed in the Star Wars card space. I know there are a couple of Star Wars card groups on there. I think I'm in one of
I
them
think
at
the people
least.
are similar, and I do think that I would say that there are people who go for the autos, who go for sketch cards, who go for
Mm.
this and that, and it's tricky because, like I said, in a group like that, it's hard not to compare. It's hard not to
Oh
go
yeah,
look at
yeah, yeah.
this, and the value you put on certain things, right?
Yeah.
Like I did a chase. The Topps Finest came out last year, and the boxes were really expensive, like everything has been. And so
Hmm.
I was like, well, I wouldn't mind getting in a little of this. So I started, when I was combing on eBay, and I found a lot of very cheap, you get the cheap autographs, and hey, there's no bones about it.
Mm.
Not everyone's going to pull a Carrie Fisher or whatnot.
Yeah.
You're going to get an Oliver Davies like I did. And I did a couple, and I ended up doing a rainbow chase of Oliver Davies from Finest, which I just recently finished. I got everything but the one of one
Okay.
superfractor. So it was
Nice.
like nine, or I think there'd be 10 total with the base auto, and then it went down through. And it was fun because I think the whole
Wow.
thing it definitely cost less than $300,
So
but it was a
Finest
fun chase.
is like a premium product on Star
Yeah,
Wars.
it
Yeah.
was a Chrome product. It was a
Okay.
baseball
All right.
carryover. The first one was 96. And I think Star Wars has only done it three times.
Okay.
But
I'm
yeah,
with you.
it was originally like a Chrome, like the 96 Tops Star Wars Finest was, kind of the culmination of that, as
Mm.
you're getting it to the art stuff of the 90s, when everybody was all
Interesting.
about the art. But
Interesting.
yeah, it was a fun way to.
And who's Oliver Davis?
He did C.O. Bibble in the Phantom Menace. He's the one that says, you must contact me. He was trying, so when Padme's
Right.
off planet, and, or he's the one that goes, a disruption in communications can be only one thing: invasion, right? Yeah.
Right.
Cause
Okay,
I
I'm
could do
with
it.
you.
So he's an older gentleman. I think now he's in his 80s.
Oh, do you mean
Um,
is it Oliver Ford Davis?
yes, Oliver F.
Yes,
Davis.
I know the guy you mean. Yes, yes. No, he was in Game of Thrones as well. He's a fine English actor. Of yeah, we I've seen him on many television things over the years, chewing on the furniture at some point. So yeah, I know the guy you mean. Okay, there we go.
But it made a fun chase
Hmm, why not?
because then, it wasn't that expensive. And then, if someone's buying, a hobby box for $300 and they get an auto that they're not happy with for whatever reason, whether it was not, whatever their expectations went in, like, I'm going to get this because it's at that point, it's almost like gambling. For me, it's like, you know what? I spent about as much on the hobby box as I did on these. And there was a few different
Mm.
characters I was chasing. One of them, General Draven from Rogue One, and I forget his name. Now
Oh,
I think I have.
Daniels? No, Ben Daniels is the actor. He's the
Um,
X-wing pilot. Yeah.
no, no, no. This is the. I'll go into. I've got eBay here. Why don't I just pick this up? But he's close. I've got one card that I've been looking at.
Oh,
It's
very
just one of
nice.
those
Okay.
one of those days. I'm gonna shoot it. I'm gonna grab it, and it is. Oh, oh yeah. Of course, that one's not going to be. I think it's Alistair. What's his name?
Oh, he's a blonde fella. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
He's
I know
about
the actor.
our
Yeah.
age. I was surprised,
Yeah, I know the
but
actor. Yeah, yeah. He's been
and
on loads
so
of stuff over here on TV.
I have now I can't it won't come up. Oh, Alistair Petrie.
That's him. Right. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So I
Okay.
have there's about one more I'm looking at, and it's just a question of when I'm going to pull the trigger on it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I also, and I think it's smarter. Like if we were doing the card, if we were doing the card thing, you'd say, hey, if you pulled a one of one, or you pull a high one, then you might want to think about doing your rainbow because it's much easier to go back than if someone
To work
has.
down rather than work up. Yeah. Mm.
Right, because then it's like, is that going to come available? But I would say I was very surprised with that particular chase where I got some of like the out of 5 and out of 10 a lot cheaper than, it just because of that. And it's no knock on him. I mean, as an actor, it's just that made it fun for me. Just like there was a online the Sapphire set that they went
Mm.
back and they chromed. They redid the first two sets as in the blue Starfield 77 one, and so they chromed them on both sides. They kind of augmented the picture almost like, when he went back to the original Star Treks and modified the special
Yeah,
effects and
I'm
whatnot.
with you. Yeah, yeah.
But there was one of the puzzles, and I was like, well, I'm not going to spend $900 on a box. Oh, now you can get it for 450. Steal. Um, but there was part of the one of the puzzles, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to collect those cards, and in a 9 buy, I'm going to get the back that portion of a puzzle that's going to look
Nice.
pretty cool.
Nice.
And so it kind of kept me in there. It was something that I could afford, but also was
Mm.
something I was chasing particular things. And so those two things, you know, that made what normally be like, nah, I'll pass. It's like like masterpieces or masterwork or something like
Yeah.
that, where you'd like to have something, but I don't have the coin or I don't have the space to go. I don't need it all,
Mm.
but maybe there's a certain auto or a certain character. Well, like, you are with Black Cat, that
Yeah.
I keep a foot in it. It's
Yeah.
fun. It keeps it fun, but it keeps me
Mm.
focused, and it doesn't mean that the spigot is on full blast all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
can manage, like you're talking about the boxes that you
Mm.
get, and you're like at one day, it's almost like the reckoning comes for you. It's probably the best day and the worst day when everything comes. You're going, dear Lord,
It
what
was
did
a
I
little
do?
bit daunting. It was a heavy box as well, and a little bit brown trousers time as well when it was possibly being delivered, possibly not, possibly in someone else's house. Who knows?
I can't believe that.
Um,
That was an amazing story.
I can't. Anyway, it aged me that day. It really did. The it's interesting. There's a couple of things you said there. One of the interesting things is about when you buy a box. And okay, listen, not everyone wants to buy a box of Spideyverse, but a lot of people who buy a box of Spideyverse want to pull a Haley Steinfeld Auto, for example. That's the hit. A lot of people who buy the One Division want to get an Elizabeth Olsen or Paul Bettany, Elizabeth Olsen duel would be the jewel in the crown. But most people aren't going to get that.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I've enjoyed seeing is what he said is where you go, okay, well, I could only afford that shot. This is what I've got. I'm going to make a fun journey with the hand I've been dealt. So I'm going to go after this, or I'm going to go after that. And the other thing that you pointed out, which is the perceived wisdom now, because the boxes of original sealed wax is the expression, even though
Mm-hmm.
do they still have wax on them or in them? I don't know.
No, when the gun went
Anyway,
away,
yeah,
the wax paper went
the
away.
wax has gone away a long time ago. It's now foil or whatever. Um, the interesting thing is that people are a lot of people, and this came out in our state of the hobby thing. Secondary market is where it's at. They're just
Mm-hmm.
picking it up on the secondary because the people who can afford to wade in and do 20 cases to get a one of one Harrison Ford, or have a shot at a one of one Harrison Ford, or a one of one Josh Brolin as Thanos, or whatever it is with a piece of Infinity Gem embedded in the card. They can do that. And the thing is, chances are they're going to dump the. I'm going to cross my streams now. They're going to dump the garbage before they go into hyperspace. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just going to float away with the garbage and have a very happy time picking through that. It was certainly my approach with Black Diamond. I went into that knowing it was a properly high end set. Beautiful what I'd seen. I was smitten with it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make myself a mongrel set over the stuff that I can get. Um, 18 months later, it's gotten slightly out of control, but I have managed to put together a set that I have no illusions that I'm ever going to complete it. I probably wouldn't ever want to pay for a Tobey Maguire, not Tobey Maguire, but great if he was in there, for a Tom Holland Spider-Man exquisite
Oh,
card. Because there's 125 of them, but people have been deliberately hoovering them up to grade them and sell them for 3 times as much. So the pool of available ones is much lower. So that's pushed up that market. I'm never going to go there, but my brain's gone. I've enjoyed putting together some rainbows of other characters. So have you seen the Thor movie?
mm-hmm.
Sif, played by Jamie Alexander. Some
Oh
of her
yes.
cards. There's some nice coloured parallels. She didn't sign for the set, but recently someone who bought and done a rainbow of Clark Gregg as Agent Coulson,
Ooh.
who was in the Phase One movies and then Agents of Shield, and he was selling it, and I was like, I can't afford it, but he said, "I'll do your part payment," so I'm like, fine. So I'm paying it off over a few months, and I get the full rainbow of Clark Gregg, including an autograph card, including a single gem diamond card. Very happy with that. Thank you very much. And it's kind of like an Insta rainbow in that way. I haven't had to do that chasing, but still
Well,
just as satisfying.
you have preached patience, and I think that I say the same thing. Whether it's if you want to be a day one buyer, or
Go
you want
for
to
it
do
if
a
you can afford
pre-order,
it.
things like, yeah,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
can afford it and you get the pre-orders, like, go for it. But yeah, I tell a lot of folks, because like I said, I have this, whether the set collector actually exists, I don't know. But that, I think, when you think about someone who goes, wow, that's interesting. And I've seen this where it's like, maybe they're not a hardcore card collector, but they do like X character. And so you go, all right, if you want to go do that, then wait. Or if you would like to put together a chase, you're like, oh, I really liked, you know, Rogue One. Well, maybe I like to have a set. And you could probably find it super cheap. I think I found a complete set of Series 2 for like $5 at a con, right, in their bargain
Wow.
bin. But it's patience. It's patience and time. But yeah, you're, like I said, the secondary market is going to be your friend, because
Mm,
otherwise, it's like you can play that game for a while, but then I think it's just a zero sum game. I think, you are just going to be less happy every time you pull that trigger if you're trying to doing that. And then now you've got to unload product. And, as much as I enjoy picking up a set that someone has discarded, you know, are they really happy? I think they're probably happy to be done with it and get it out of their hair. But I'm like, wow, did you paid a lot for that? I didn't. So,
mm, mm.
but yeah, it's same thing with you. A friend of mine, in climbing through Star Wars 3DI. This is a 3D set. You can't really see this well on the zoom, but a friend of mine, like I'd found some that
Oh,
someone had
that's
given me.
beautiful.
I'd
I
found
didn't
some
know
that
those
someone had given
existed.
me.
So they're a widescreen
Right
release,
in the
yeah?
mid '90s, and this is really doing a poor job. I'm going to bring this back here. So
Oh, that's
in the
cool.
mid '90s, after the Galaxy sets came out, Topps released a bunch of wide visions. This is an Empire promo card. Sorry, it's got in there. Um, and then they experimented with the 3D ones, and so
Nice.
but they didn't sell very well, and so there's a huge gap between this one, which actually went to market, Empire, which came out, like 2010, and then
Wow.
2014 for Return of the Jedi. But at that point, both of those were like online. You bought them as a box,
I'm with you.
and so sealed boxes and so forth of some of these are incredibly rare and hard to find. But a friend of mine was like, "Hey, I've got some extras," and I'm like, "Hey, I'll take a little bit from you now. I'll go back to it later on because I think getting these for the price I got them, I'm like, so
Nice.
there's only 55 of these, but I have pretty much nearly all the wide vision cards that are out there. There's a couple things I don't have, but yeah, this is something that Topps really dove into.
Mm.
What's nice about this particular the 3D is that this is a preview of the next card in the series.
Yeah, I love the wide vision cards. I remember when you did an episode where you were talking about the wide vision cards and you were talking about the design of them.
And some of the
And
times they had a bunch of stuff on the
yeah,
back.
and I
And
went and picked up. I managed to get a binder, the original binder,
mhm.
and I've got I think New Hope, got those. Um, and weirdly, I think I've ended up with two sets somewhere along the line. Anyway, I love them, and I still need to get Empire and Return of the Jedi in that binder as well because there's room in there. The thing that I find difficult is that they no longer make the Ultra Pro pages for them. I think you can still buy them, but I don't think you can get them new. So I think
BCW
there's
makes them, which I know you said you
that
can find.
probably explains why I've not seen seen them because the BCW comic stuff makes it over here, but the card stuff doesn't really get distributed that much in the UK.
Next time you do some eBay, yeah, because that's the same thing. Recently, they Topps put out a T206, which is their tobacco card. Their Star Wars version of the old tobacco cards.
Oh wow, okay.
That was these, right? These are the shape of the old, turn of the century tobacco ones,
Gotcha.
and these
Okay.
were online packs. They do make sheets for them, which if I would have gone just to look, I'm going, there's got to be sheets for these. Yes,
Mm,
there are. I probably would have picked up a few more because they're a little hard. They're a little more expensive now, unless
mm,
people are looking for certain things. But
yeah.
I think it goes back the same way. If I don't really have sheets for these, then what they become is piles of cards, and I hate
Yes.
piles of cards. Like I hate boxes, and boxes are a necessary evil. But
Mm.
boxes mean that I forget things and I can't look through them and I can't just pull them off and shuffle them through, and then they get lost to time. Then you forget what you have.
Which is why I've
It's
just invested in one of these Ultra Pro draw units,
that's nice. I
which
thought about
you'll
that.
see on the episode. Actually, as we record it, you won't have seen it, but on last week's episode, as people listen to this, I talk it through and do a kind of an online review of it. So I'm not going to go back into that now. Go back and watch that episode if you want to know about the Ultra Pro draw organizer.
The last thing I'll say on these 3D ones is they have like there's a plastic coating on it,
Mm.
ridges that you can kind of see.
Oh, the
Um,
lenticular.
yes, thank you. That's the word
Yes.
I'm looking for. But
Mm.
they also collect dust, dirt, and grease like
Oh
nobody's
my
business.
goodness. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the ones I'd had were not in really, they were really kind of disgusting to feel. And so I went back there, and I think a friend of mine, Peter Stukas, said Windex wipes, I think, are probably the key. I used a combination of like do some water on paper towel, and then I think, or no, like a handkerchief. And then I actually went as far as doing some of the like the Clorox wipes just to rub them, and you'd be surprised like what I was able to pull off. Some of
Oh,
them, it's the wear and tear of it anyway. But yeah, it felt a lot. They feel a lot better. The back of it is a cardboard. It's a little kind of thicker stock, but I think if you're careful, you go one direction. It
mm.
cleans them up, and you go, oh, that feels so much better, and a little less. And now I can kind of get past the condition of them and get into, oh wow, I can really take in the
Yeah, yeah,
whole
yeah.
room.
You can get all that feckum off so they don't feel so
Mm-hmm.
quite so ugh, someone else's dirt on there. It
Well, I mean,
just
stuff
makes you
sits around for 25,
yeah,
30
it
years.
does. And it builds up,
Mm-hmm.
just makes your back open and shut thinking about it. I wish I wish Upper Deck would. Here's the thing. Maybe I'm the only one who wishes for this. I would love some wide vision, or that wide format for some of the MCU stuff. I really would, um, especially if it was on thicker stock. Um, One of the most joyful things I've recently acquired is there was a Star Trek movie set. I think it was Insurrection. Um, Possibly Nemesis. No, definitely Insurrection, where the auto cards and I think the set actually were a widescreen format.
Oh, nice.
So they're on card autos. So there's so much more room for the autograph to flow across the card, and they're absolutely stunning. They're absolutely joyous in hand. So admittedly, Upper Deck, they're on sticker autos these days for the majority of the Marvel stuff. In fact, all of the Marvel stuff. But just some of those cards in a just that slightly bigger widescreen format would be beautiful to behold. Would also drive everyone absolutely nuts in terms of the storage, and how you store them. Because I don't know if you can get those mag cases, those one-touch mag cases for wide vision cards. I know you can get them for regular size.
I wouldn't put it past, especially it's one of those every now and then I do like getting into the local card shop to kind of see because there's so much in there, and sometimes the shops I really love it when the shops will sell individually, like, hey, I don't need a full box of 9 buys, can I just get this? Or I want to get an odd size box, and they have, would you like to have a 200 count box, 3, 4, 5 to 8?
Yeah,
Or you want to I'm like, you know what, and they're usually cheap enough that I get them, that I can go, you know what, I'm going to get one of these. I don't intend on holding it for life, but for right now, it's going to really help. And then
yeah.
I can discard it. I can discard it later. So, one of the things we have the luxury of is we have a decent number of card shops. The pandemic has helped really spring some of them back up. Some are more helpful than others. But it is nice, and you do kind of find like, oh, I want to go there because that I can. Each shop has its own flavor of what it can sell that maybe the other ones
Yeah,
don't, or they have a focus of, they have more glass displays where you can get. I got the reason I got this Galaxy card of Ben Abasada's is that one shop had Chicagoland Sports Cards had like these little bundles of just random cards, and this just happened to be, I'm like, this is the one I'm looking for. And
nice.
even Ben didn't realize that he was in this set. And so whereas something like, it was fairly cheap to get, and then just, yesterday I was able to have him sign it in person,
Nice.
and which makes it special. So it's like there's a card that had a very unique journey. And I do have I'm surprised I got that Galaxy Chrome box. I got it, good lord, I bought it for maybe 120, and now you can find them for 600. Just went up for a little bit for no reason at all. The newer ones are 349 retail, and you're like, why? These are
Well,
reprints of
yeah.
particular ones, but somewhere out there someone said that this is a very high-end product, and it moved the market movers, or however they did it, and the manufacturers, went along with it, or they went in kind with it, going, well, that must be where it is. And you
Hmm.
know
Well,
but
I'm going to have a little bit of that coin as well at the
why not?
primary. And yeah, exactly. Can I show you some cool stuff?
I'd love to see some cool stuff.
I've got some cool stuff. So the other day on eBay is one thing I do like doing. Occasionally on eBay UK, you get random lots of stuff,
I love
and
lots.
so yeah, and this was a lot of uncut promos from '90s. Okay, now
Ooh.
there's all sorts of stuff in here. Now there is some Marvel, so I'm going to do the Marvel first, and then I'm going to move on to the interesting stuff. So let's do the Marvel first. Now, most of these I already have, but I needed some duplicate copies because this one for Fleer Ultra Spider-Man, which is a beautiful
Look at
promo,
that.
has got Black Cat on it in the top right. That's a Boris Vallejo Black Cat. So this is a perforated one. So this came in a magazine, and I know that on Allender's website, it will say which magazine it was. I haven't looked, but of course on the back you've got all the promo for the set.
Oh, it's perfect.
So it's just a lovely collectible item in and of itself. It's absolutely joyous. It really is. Um, and then also in this bundle was the same perforated from Marvel Universe 1994,
Mm.
which is just a little bit more bonkers in terms of the 90s-ness of it.
But you know what's so critical about those things is they'll have, and I've been kind of trying to go after some promos, more promos recently. Although
mm,
there's a ton of them, they give you a lot of information about like when is the set coming out, what does it
exactly.
have in it, and
Yeah.
you're going, this is, it's, I hate throwing out around the words historical piece, but I'm like, it does give you an idea of when you're trying to research this. Like you
Yeah.
might, you know, because it gives you a context of where was Marvel's head when this came out? Why did
Yeah.
they
I
do
mean,
this?
this is that
Mhm.
weird, short-lived 90s Daredevil. There we go. This side Daredevil
Ooh.
costume that he had in the 90s
Oh
for a bit.
yeah,
It
the
kind of
black
went,
and red.
oh, it's like, what were they thinking? Um, but they're beautiful. They are kind of time capsules. So this is a classic that people will love. Amazing Spider-Man, the Mark Bagley set from '94. So Mark
Ooh,
Bagley drew the whole thing. Um, Now we did actually reach out to Mark Bagley via someone else to come on the podcast. I'm going to say this
nice.
now because he basically said, "I don't know what I'd tell him. I can't even remember drawing it." So he politely declined. So asked and answered, I guess. Now the interesting thing about this set is that there were different versions of these that had a different stamp on depending on where they were distributed.
Oh,
So this one, I don't think I've got it. It's Comic Book Collector,
collector.
which I think was a magazine. I think. But there are different ones, and some of them have got. So I think a couple of them have got different logo, sort of in this top corner here as well. So there are some really scarce ones. Anyway, this is lovely.
I love that.
Um, this is just a beautiful piece. It's slightly smaller, so they're not full card size. Now there is something in your wheelhouse coming. Just to preempt your enthusiasm there. This is a 4-panel perforated again. This came out of a magazine, but a lot of these were available as non-perforated ones as well that came loose in polybags from Marvel Metal.
Ooh, and
So
that's a
these are
'90s
just
one, right?
delightful. Yeah, this is 95. I think Marvel Metal came out. There was only actually one metal set in the 90s, and this was it.
I was going to ask
Um,
because recently we had that. I think my son got me some metal cards from like
mm,
some buddies of him that shop that opened up, and
mm,
it's nice knowing that there was a history to that
yes,
particular
yes,
property.
yeah. They brought it back. They brought it back in a big way. Um, Now, this, I don't know what this is. It isn't for a card set, but it is beautiful. It's Draw the Marvel Comics Superheroes. So it's a book, but it's a promo for the book. But look at that. It's beautiful. It's John
Wow.
Romita artwork. And look at the foiling on that. So it is just exactly that. It's just a promo. It's about the same size as, but it's a bit smaller than the others. Um, Draw this Marvel comic superhero, a mighty manual of massively amazing step-by-step instruction. It's just delightful. I just thought it was such a curiosity. I spotted it in the photo. I was like, "Oh, it's worth it for that alone." And then, so that was the Marvel bundle. Actually, no, there's one more in the Marvel bundle. 95 Flair, which again
Ooh.
is a 4 card. Now that is premium stock for the 90s. That's 35 point, I think. Um, and that Spider-Man from Flair is, for my money, one of the nicest Spider-Mans from the
Oh, that
90s.
is nice.
It's just stunning on its own. It really is. Some of the artwork on this set, I think, is fairly safe to say, is very 90s and very, very of its time. Hello, Namor in the bottom corner there.
Wow, Namor. Yeah, he hasn't skipped a
That's
leg or arm day.
he hasn't skipped any days. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece. That's not a perforated one. That's in and of itself, but it's thick and it feels. I mean, look at the gloss on it. I mean that it's like it could be opened yesterday. It's beautiful condition. Anyway, then there was a load of random other stuff because, as you mentioned earlier, the card boom, everything you could possibly have was coming out as a card set, like Neil Gaiman's Lady Justice. There's a promo thing for that. On the other side, you've got Mickey Spillane's Mike Danger.
Mickey Spillane.
Then Fleer Ultra Skeleton Warriors.
Wow.
What's that all about? So it's not a Marvel thing,
Just at that
but it's
point,
just like why not? I guess
it's almost like the Netflix of their day going,
I know.
what were they turning down is the question.
Lead and Nimoy's Primortals. Some of this stuff is
Oh
ridiculous.
my goodness.
I mean, it's great. Uh, then there's a four up here. Gene Roddenberry's Lost Universe. Then you've got Neil Gaiman, Leonard Nimoy, all in one thing. So it's kind of a four up of promo cards. I mean, that's literally what it is.
Wow.
So four promo cards in an uncut sheet. Never seen anything like it. Then randomly, there's two in here for the Waterworld movie set.
Ooh, ooh.
But look at the quality of the look at the quality of it. I mean, it's beautiful. It's just
Wow.
lovely. There's two of those. I'll send you one if you want.
Oh my
No, you're
goodness.
okay. And save stamp. Neil Gaiman's Technophage, and then Neil Gaiman's Lady Justice. So this is what made Neil Gaiman his money, folks. Another Skeleton Warriors, same one. And then we get into the good stuff. Star Wars Wide Vision.
Ooh, ooh.
Isn't that
And
beautiful?
I've seen some that are around that size,
Mm.
and I've been trying to figure out because I think you're probably in the same boat of like, what's the best way to store them, or if I have space, display them.
Yes, it's tricky.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Display wise, you can get top loaders this size.
Hmm. Yes, you can.
Um, but I mean, this is just stunning. A lot of these were loose polybagged in Star Wars Galaxy magazine.
Yes.
Um,
Everybody had a magazine. That's also a long
yeah,
overdue project is to
mm.
get some of those,
That's
because
so many promos. It's ridiculous.
so many.
But that's beautiful. Then we've got now this is perforated. Again, it's wide vision. So it's three cards. The perforation's there where it's been torn out of a
Mm.
magazine. So this is Empire. So I don't have the wide vision Empire set. But if you look at the back, it's printed too close so that when you pull out the perforation, you cut off the end.
Oh wow. Yeah, that was
You see
oh,
what I
that's
mean? You've got all this gap down this side, but obviously
I
the
know.
perforation was just, he could have shunted it a bit this way. So I don't know if that was just the design of it or just an unlucky one that got misprinted or misaligned somehow. But anyway, but it's still a
It's
lovely piece because you could happily display that outside.
and for collectors, especially in the 90s, these are so difficult
Mm,
to figure out, to track down, just because there were so many and
mm,
they were coming here, there, and everywhere. And you're just like, some of them were numbered, right? You get the whole
mm,
P number, and then some weren't. And if you're a completist, I think it's got to make you, lose what left little hair
mm,
you have
mm.
left. Um, I can speak for myself on that, but
This one's a shame because this has clearly been cut somehow, and I don't know why, but it's a partial Star Wars Galaxy 2 promo. You can see that it's been shot. It's
mm-hmm.
cut there, and on the back you can see it's been cut off because you've only got half the logo. The wording starts. So I don't know. That's a ridiculously clean cut. So it looks factory cut. So I think that's some sort of error
Hmm.
because I don't think that's been cut aftermarket by someone. It's just too perfect an edge. It's really strange. It was
I
just in there.
like I said, I've just recently started looking harder on some of the promos, and you see some of these, and
Mm,
it's easier if a promo card is already something that could fit in a 9 by or a sleeve.
yeah.
But it's when some of these odd sizes, like postcard size, and you go, do I really want that? Where am I going to put it? Those are the kind of
Mm.
questions that you go, do I, yeah, like, oh man, those are
Galaxy
so.
Series 3. And that one is, I mean, unfortunately, it's got a slight tear just at the edge there. You can see.
Mm.
But it's just stunning.
You know what that would be perfect for is if, like, for example, you had a promo card where you could recognize the artist. That would be
Yes.
a gorgeous auto opportunity, because there's
Absolutely. I mean,
plenty of white space
yeah.
there that the artist could sign there. I did recently pick up a Joe Caroni promo card that I think the next time I see him, I'm going to have him sign.
Yeah.
I've had him sign a few before, but it's like, you take a random promo card, and it's, if you're
Mm,
going in and having them autographed, they're kind of like, oh, I haven't seen that one in a while, or it's something a little odd. It's not
yeah.
something maybe they would expect, and it could make for not only a fun collectible, but a fun encounter as well.
So that's it for the Star Wars stuff. But we do, of course, have an
Oh,
obligatory Vampirella. So let's throw that into the mix as well. There we go. So I told you it was a random bundle. I saw it on eBay. I was like, I'll throw in a bid, and I won it. So
No, but you
I
when
love
you
some of
talk
this
about
stuff.
the when you
You know,
talk about the paper, the cardstock that
mm,
they're using, the designs, because a lot of that, you can clearly see that everyone is trying to get in there. They're
yeah.
trying to figure out a way to make it different, and it gives you an idea,
This
especially
is
collectors. Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
28 years old. Look at the quality of it. I mean, just the quality of the printing. I mean, Marvel Metal did actually break quite a lot of boundaries in terms of the print quality. They really stretched and reached to get this kind of, they had to figure out how to do the all different layers and foiling and things like that. And they really hold up. They really hold up. Um, One of the things I was thinking about earlier, and I mentioned it just before we started recording, was with Star Wars Galaxy. So for those who are in the Marvel space but not in the Star Wars space who don't know, Star Wars Galaxy is pretty much the original art
Hmm.
set that Top started doing in the 90s. Now, when did Star Wars Galaxy Series 1 drop?
1993. So
1993.
10 years after Return of the Jedi, the cards came out. And there is a nice book. Abrams does make one, and
Mm.
I pimp it continually. Please hire me because I'm a champion of these books. But there is one. It doesn't go over. It goes over the first three sets. It doesn't go over every card, but it does kind of give you an idea. Gary Durrani does the forward for it and kind of gives you
Yeah.
an idea of what they're thinking of and they're going after, and how the set's kind of evolved. But it is something
Mm.
that and surprisingly, and also of its era, it's incredibly mass produced. So although
Interesting.
I've seen sealed boxes go for now triple, what I thank my lucky stars that I got my three boxes sealed when I did for less than $100, I think, for the whole
Wow.
kit. Because I bought them piecemeal. Now it's hard to find them, but each of those boxes had what, 36 packs of like nine. I
Mm.
mean, you get an amazing number of cards, but I think it was like 144 card set.
Yes,
There
it's a
were
big
some
set.
Walt
Mm.
Simonson foil chase cards that I think they made a 6 by puzzle or something like that. But yeah, it was really celebrating the art of,
Mm.
and very popular. They did it again in 94. They did it in 95. And
Mm.
then, as I've mentioned this before, it's like in 96, you get both Finest, which I think to me is kind of the culmination of that. But what's interesting about those sets is every one of these Galaxy sets, you'll see characters that, especially the EU characters at the time. So
Mm.
by then,
Extended
bought
universe. Yeah.
by yeah, so now you're getting Thrawn, you're getting Myra Jade, and all that. So it's a great capsule of where that is. But also the finest was Chrome, and then you throw in there the Hildebrandt brothers who did Shadows of the Empire. So those
Mm-hmm.
those come out within a few months of each other. And then there was this. There's one where they did these oversized ones. It was in a packaging.
Oh, I
I think it
saw
was
those. Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Master something, and
Yeah,
I could have gotten it several times, but when you get those odd sizes, you're like, where am I going to put it? It's
yeah.
gonna be stacked somewhere. But you can kind of see where they kind of finish up with that, and it's interesting that that overlaps a bit with the wide visions, right? So it's like you have this great arc of all this, Galaxy.
Mm.
They're coming out with the magazines now, and then it kind of peters itself out. You get through Finest and Shadows, and then now you're getting into wide vision, and then a couple years later, we're already into episode one.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's an amazing, and then of course there are 8 sets of Galaxy plus the two
Oh, they're up to
Chrome
eight now.
versions.
Oh, okay.
But Galaxy 4 doesn't come out until into the aughts,
Well,
and
that's the
then
thing. I've drawn the line at Galaxy Series 3 because I bought a lot off eBay. It was the binder, and it had the majority of Galaxy 1, 2, and 3 in there, including most of the
nice.
chase and most of the promos. And it was a steal at the time. It was less than $100. And this is going back. This is COVID year actually, and I've been gradually like chipping away and filling in. And in fact, in there were a load of Galaxy Free. Every every pack had a first day issue card, which had a gold foil stamp. So in my binder, there were, I didn't spot it until I went through and repaged them because the pages were quite old. There were two of quite a few cards because they put the regular card and the first
For
day
the
issue
collector. good collector there.
in the same pocket, which is like, okay, fair enough. Anyway, those first day issue ones I've kept aside. I've finally found them. I'm going to mail them to good collector who I met in Boston. Actually, we met up and had lunch. Jose Solares. I said I'd give them to him because that's exactly the kind of thing he collects. Because they're doubles for me. I'm never going to go after that set. But the interesting thing for me about Galaxy is that it came out. It's kind of tops seeing, okay, original art. Let's get some of these artists who are like crazily selling all their, because Card Boom, a lot of these artists were doing their own sets. Such as the 90s. They could put out the sets of their own creator-owned properties and artwork, and it would still sell. That they brought this out just after Marvel had come out and Skybox had come out with Marvel Masterpieces 92, which is that original art kind of game changer that Joe Jusko did. So it's very interesting that that's the very quickly, okay, Marvel come out with it, then Topps came out with theirs with Star Wars Galaxy, and it forever kind of changes. It opens up a new kind of territory, if you like, for a cinematic property to have artists doing those, representations of the characters.
And bear in mind that in the Star Wars universe, there's no hint that there's going to be any more movies, right? So you're not going to get, there's no TV shows, there's no movies. And so what do we have?
You got to find a fresh way to do it.
This gives you a huge amount of fresh content. You're also seeing that comics boom at the time as well. And you're talking about cardstock. Remember all those different hologrammed, I have a bunch of X-Men and all, where they were doing all different kinds of inserts and special covers and all this, and they're completely worthless now. I have a lot of them because I thought, bagged and boarded with care. And
bought 2 copies, one to read, one to leave sealed.
Next cold nay. But hey, now they show up as comic cut cards in Fleer Ultra, whatever. I'd love them to take a card, make a card, tell Upper Deck this, make a card of some of those hologram covers, pieces of those, because that would be a great way to repackage and really make it worth, like, yes, kids, you see these were things that we were like, please, like, comic stores were just too happy to have kids, show
I wish Upper Deck would do that. So there was an X-Men crossover event that had a hologram card or a hologram panel the size of a card that was part of the cover. So it's virtually impossible to take off without completely the book. Although a few have popped up over the years. They were very much part of the book, and they were a hologram. I can't remember the name of the crossover now off the top of my head. But anyway, doing a comic cut, because there's millions of them out there that were mass printed. You could do a comic cut just of that hologram section of that cover. And straight away, you've got a 90s hologram in a comic cut cover card, because the cover pieces of comic cuts are always much more desirable.
And you could get those for a song. I mean, they're not valuable. Unlike, when you had the Upper Deck guys on there talking about, like, taking an Amazing Fantasy, or they taking this, which would be an amazing one. I think just for the nostalgia of it, and the fact I think it would make a really cool insert, is just, like something like a little green, a little flashy. You can see part of, Wolverine.
There you go, Upper Deck. Have that one.
There.
Yeah.
For free. I'm giving that one away for free.
No. They'll get you on their payroll if you're not careful. I constantly say to Marvel that they need to Upper Deck that they need to do more. They constantly go after the classics when they're doing their comic cuts and things like that, the key issues and the big properties. There's a whole market out there who quite happily pay for some of the lower end of the rung. So I'm still pushing for some sort of new universe subset or comic cuts.
You were talking about
I'm
that
still
going to
push for this. I'm going to push for this until I'm blue in the face. They're never going to do it because it's not commercially viable at all. But yeah, no, a Midnight Suns set is rumored to be on the horizon, a Fleer Ultra one, which I take full credit for, because we actually discussed and did some blue sky thinking on this on this very podcast about 2 years ago about what would make a good Fleer Ultra set, and one of the options was Midnight Suns. Sure enough, there's an artist who's put sketch stock on social media who's probably gotten a slap for doing so by now. Fleer Ultra Midnight Suns.
Nice.
Is coming, and I'm sorry, Upper Deck. I don't care if you might have thought of it internally and it was just kismet, but I'm taking credit for that. Thank you very much.
If I ever see if I ever see a Star Brand set, I will say, you know what?
Oh,
And you're
Starbrand.
talking to a kid who bought in. I bought in on the new universe, man. I was all like,
Mm.
that was the time, and I'm like, man, this is gonna be. I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get this, and yeah.
It was a fun read. I mean, I can't say the top quality, but it was a fun read. I mean, Starbrand had John Byrne on the artwork, so you can't go too far wrong with that. Um, Spitfire and the Troubleshooters, Merc, Hazard, DP7, Justice. It was brilliant.
You can
It,
rattle those off a lot better than I
it was
can.
Halcyon Days. I tell you one that always gets lumped in with it, but wasn't New Universe, is Strike Force Morituri, which was an
I remember that.
absolutely extraordinary. It ran a fair way actually. I think it ran about 40 issues, and then there were four kind of prestige format stories that came off the back of it. Um, and it was soldiers that were kind of bred to fight, but they'd burn up their energy and they had really short lifespans basically. So it was a constantly revolving roster of characters
Hmm.
as you went through. And when their life expired, effectively they became a human bomb. So basically, they just wherever they were, and they kind of glowed and went off. I need to reread it because I'm remembering from like 30 years ago, but I've got them all just down here, packed and boarded. Um, but like them, they might not have been the most popular things, but they're part of Marvel Comics history.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love for them to get a showing in cards, but unfortunately, I don't think they ever will, because they didn't sell very well. They came and went, and I think Starbrand has made an appearance on Marvel Beginnings. So
He
there is
had a
at least
little
one
secondary
Starbrand
life,
card.
didn't
Yeah,
he?
there is at least one
Yeah.
Starbrand cards in Marvel Beginnings. And yeah, they've kind of brought it back as a different character and kind of very, very kind of teenage, high schooly kind of character. And disgusting. But listen, if Power Pack can make it onto modern cards,
Ooh.
then I'm sorry, but there's room for some new universe, and I will fight anyone who disagrees. Um, so, Greg, Greg, what next for you? What are you excited about? I tell you one thing I do like talking about, content as a resource and things like that. I often find your episodes are really good for me when you do your as like homestead keeping episodes where you're talking about okay, what's coming up, what's coming out, what the retail price is like to be, what the product is. I get a lot from that. And we waffle too much to succinctly put that kind of information out there in the world. So um it's funny, I'm still saying we. Um
No, I say it all the time, and I'm like, it's a we
yeah.
as in me.
Well, it has been
Um,
we for the longest time, so it's kind of a new reality. This is only like the third recording I've done since the Reformation. Um, and it's an odd one for me
don't tell me you
because
have Norin buried in Canterbury Church, which I was just there, by the
no,
way. So
no, I don't, I don't at all. Um, that would be some big sarcophagus. It's a tall fella. Um, so yeah, so I'm still kind of figuring out, the kind of new reality of it all. But I enjoy your kind of catch up. It keeps me in touch with what's happening in terms of Star Wars card releases and things like that. So obviously you're doing your side quests, your breakfast kind of pack episodes, and you've been doing your own homebrew cards as well, which I love. What you got? Oh, stop it.
at Celebration, what I'm showing is this is a when Ewan McGregor took the stage at Celebration
You took that
and
photo, yeah?
thanked the crowd. Yes.
Nice.
Frank Mulder and Mr. and Mrs. Daffron were there, and the Celebration live stages were these recurring, like you had your
Mm,
big ones that people would get like tickets for, and they would go through much deeper. But I think they would bring people out and they would talk to them.
yeah.
I got to see one with Ian McDermott on it, but yeah,
Mm.
Ewan comes out and basically says, you know what, I haven't done any of these things, and he was just really nice. And as soon as I saw this was taken a still shot taken from video I'd taken
Because
of
you
it.
did the video. Yeah, I watched the video that you put up. Yeah.
And then I'm
That looked
like,
like
I've got to
such
take
an
this.
incredible experience. It really did.
And it goes into the base packs. Like now that green one is a part of like what you're seeing here is kind of a
Oh, okay.
preview.
Series
Um,
4. Wow.
Series 4, and this is a demo of the packaging, which I'm still tweaking. I started this a little while ago, and because sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a stack of them and I'll kind of see, and then I'm kind of rethinking. Like this year, um, Return of the Jedi has its 40th anniversary. I've already got a template I made of the Return of the Jedi one, so whereas these are all the cards that I do are done in order of the years in the podcast. So it's like this
Yes.
one is green. Next year will be orange as the original 5 sets.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go into Empire, the Empire sets, and then I'll do them. If knock on wood, if I last 10 years, I'll get through the original vintage of the different releases and then get into Galaxy and whatnot. But these become like a nice scrapbook of what I've done, places I've visited, and also it works as a promo card with a QR code now that goes to the podcast feed. And what's nice is doing original art, doing my own artwork. And I reuse this stuff constantly because I'm just not that good, and so it makes it fun because then you can give something out as swag.
Yeah, they're fun. I love them.
And they're fun. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a
No, no, no,
tangent.
no.
That
Actually, I
would
was going to
be
say we blatantly stole your idea, as in every year we changed the kind of the visual, the episode that we use on social media, and that was all you. We were like, oh, let's copy that. At least yours has a kind of a more of a inbuilt reason for it. We just did it because we fancied doing it. Although now that Nolan has unfortunately left us, after 2023, I'm not sure because he was the Photoshop wizard of the two of us. I haven't got a clue. So who knows if we'll ever change it again. But yeah, no, thank you for that idea.
well, no, and then the homestead keeping, I think I really kind of leaned into it after I kind of listened to you talk about how much you kind of enjoy it. And it was a nice way, even if the content was not necessarily going to talk about cards, like I'm going to talk to so and so who's cosplaying does this. Okay, in the first few minutes, I can satisfy. And I think even people will go like, well, you can wait for the interview if you want to, you can skip forward. But then I can get it out. But like when we're not going to see Masterwork, which is the next release, not until March, maybe. What am I, like I can talk about
Yeah.
what's happening right now, but I can put it in there. But there's the online stuff, so I can. Or what Tops does is release something the day after I do a bunch of homestead keeping and catch everybody up, and I'm like, all right, thank you for releasing the throwback sets. Now, okay, now they're on Thursdays, and so now I have something else. So, yeah, I think like anything else, we kind of tying it back into how the show evolves. Like, what's the best way to package this? If somebody has the time, if I'm fortunate, if somebody has the time to listen to the whole thing, you can go through that. And if I'm doing an interview, if I'm talking to somebody, or I'm giving you highlights, but this first part, I can talk about this. We can get the nuts and bolts out. The trick is just to record all the bits together. And then, of course, last year I got really behind, and so a lot of stuff went really late. And I think I've got just one more interview I got to get out. But that also is like, it puts you into territory, just like what you're talking about, going, all right, it's going to be a little different, but if I enjoy doing it and I have the time and I'm not hurting anybody, let's try to figure out the best way to do this so that I kind of scratch that itch, but I'm also serving a community in my head that exists somewhere out there. And then keep it fun, because they're coming with us to join the journey. Just like when I can go, oh, I can listen in and like, I love the stuff that you have done with Upper Deck, especially when they talk about things and you go, man, this is, I like what they're doing. But we also have some very difficult times ahead with the finishing of the transitions from Fanatics and how that's going to shift across right now. Upper Deck, has hockey, and they have the O-Pee-Chee and all that. And I think that's going to pretty much stay there. But, poor Panini is going to lose basketball. Tops is already, it's nice that Fanatics bought Tops so they get all that. But then their influence, and I think you saw a little bit of that last year with a lot of the Chrome. Everybody went Chrome crazy. And, there's going to be some sets coming out. What's the frequency going to be? How is it going to be? And then when it all shakes out in a couple, 3 years, especially given everything that the folks have come in and they've made the investment, I think we can be a voice for folks for a little bit of both of like, because there'll be a reckoning coming for some folks and then going, some of the stuff may be incredibly valuable and well on it. There'll be a lot of people that'll grade things, and I'm getting into that where I think there is a auto that I think I need to have graded. It was Hayden Christensen.
Oh
It's
wow,
another
yes.
one that I may end up flipping or selling off because this would when you I loved what you talked about. Like I could you thought about like getting rid of a card that could pay for a vacation, and I'm like, wow, I can't. Mine wouldn't pay for a whole vacation, but I'm like, you know what? If you could turn that card that I've enjoyed for a time, maybe get it graded so I could see how the process works, but
Get it
also
authenticated.
get it authenticated, get
Yeah.
it graded,
But no,
and
that's the
then
thing. Just get it authenticated. Because you can do it. I guess it depends. Do you want it to? There's a school of thought that says if it's an autographed card,
mm-hmm,
that rather than get it graded, you get it slabbed, but you get it authenticated instead. So they don't give it a
right,
score, because if they give it a score that maybe is under expectation, so a 7, it instantly
devalues
devalues
it.
it a little bit in the eyes of the people. Whereas at least if it's encapsulated and authenticated, it's holding. And also, especially for a very limited card, there is another school of thought that says that you're just someone who owns that card on its journey, especially the
Mm-hmm.
really limited stuff like the less than 10 or the 1 of 1. It's like, and some people might disagree with this, but there is a school of thought that's like you have a responsibility to look after that card on its journey, because you won't be the final place that card stops. Chances are, I mean, some people might get buried with their cards. Most people won't, apart from maybe Mr. Fuxham. But that's an interesting one, because it might not pay for a vacation, but I'm sure it'll give you a nice meal out.
I think so,
And you've
and
enjoyed it and
I've
held it
enjoyed
for a
it.
time, and it'll go on to another owner, and it'll be their turn to carry that torch.
Exactly, and make a little hay for them. And then, like I said, Hayden didn't do me any disservice by you know, showing up recently in a Disney Plus series. So you're like, that really helps. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and when I really want to start taking Mike Summer of the Wax Pack Heroes,
Mm.
about having your hobby sustain itself, not necessarily having make sure it pays for, like if it can pay for itself, great, and in that way, especially even since I'm doing custom cards, having some of that get paid for, or like I said, anything you can do. But yeah, rather than just move it out or dump it
Mm.
or just, put it in a box and put it there. I'm like, let's get this into somebody else's hands that could do something with it, regardless of whether I'm selling it. Like now I think Sport Lots is selling, you can do non-sport and you can list. And I've
Yeah.
done that with other things. And so there's another part of this journey that I'm just getting ready to maybe start. And it's going to be interesting and there'll be mistakes made and so forth. But, when you take a look at going, when you get past I want to get everything, or I want to get this, or I'm finishing a set, and you start kind of taking a step back and looking at it, this is what I want to keep. This is what I really want to focus on. This is what I should probably let go.
Yeah.
I should reach out and probably trade for this. I'm like, you're just making yourself, I think you're just making yourself happier at the end.
Yeah.
And, like I said, and you didn't lose your house. It's so great.
Yeah. It's always a bonus if you've still got somewhere to live at the end of the day. No, I'm very much with Star Wars. You gave me such a good start the other year, but the problem is that in the mentality and the headspace I was in at that time, I was like, oh, okay, there's pieces of about 15 different Star Wars sets here. So I slotted them all into the nine card pages and went through like boxes of them, because I left room for all the ones that I didn't have yet.
The argument of if I keep it there, do I just put them
So
because I don't
now,
intend on, yeah.
yeah, I'm going to trim down. Basically, I've already set my guardrails for Star Wars stuff, because it was getting to the point where all the new movie stuff, like Rise of Skywalker, Journey to the Rise of Skywalker, Mando, I just can't do it at all. So in terms of the actual card set, Galaxy. Sorry, my cat is doing something crazy. She's been trying to get in for the last hour, and kind of, that when. Do you own cats?
I do not.
No. Have you ever owned a cat?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So the cat's outside. It's glass, so I can't hear her. So I can just see her through the glass, looking at me, going. Oh, she's meowing, but I can't hear her because it's silent. Sorry. Anyway. So yeah. So for me, for Star Wars, I want to get the originals. So I want to get the the different color series for Star Wars, Empire, and Return of the Jedi. Please tell me you're going to be doing the same kind of retrospective for Return of the Jedi sets as you did for Empire.
I do plan on and that's something I should start planning
Because
because
they
I
were incredible.
thank you.
I
Yeah, I do.
loved them.
I was wanting to try to assemble some of the band again to do
Mm,
not only to look back at the Jedi sets, but then like probably it's a two-parter. It's probably of like because there are two sets of Return of the Jedi, unless you want to get into some of the others, and then what happened afterwards, because there aren't as many. You've got
mm.
black and white, you've got the wide vision, you've got wide vision 3D. If you wanted to look at, there was some the Kellogg's box, like so there's these little bits and bobs ones I think
There's
that would make an
offshoots.
interesting one.
Yeah.
There's
Mm,
offshoots, and that's kind of been a fun journey on its own. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I started on the custom things was to talk about the 40th and start to kind of get those
mm,
ducks in a row, because yeah, it serves, it's nice, and then you'll wonder if Tops will do anything. Will they do an online 10 card release, or will they do something in the vein of those, with
mm,
that design? Because they've used that design in the Rogue One Journey to or mission briefing. They
mm.
use that Return of the Jedi border style.
Yes.
And so yeah, those are fun, and you could go back and listen to, and I had Tom Gross and Michael, shoot, forget his name, Hoth Ion Control on Instagram. We had a great one on the original sets, and then
That's
Steve
right.
Stolk, Star Wars Topps cards, came on, and we talked about, because he collects the sealed boxes and whatnots, and he's been
Gotcha.
doing it ever since. And so probably assemble a lot of that crew back. And then there's some people that just collect, like that the Luke of that time. Peter's a great
Mm,
one where he'll have commissions done of Luke at that time,
yeah.
and so try to get, yeah, because it's an anniversary you don't want to let go, and then of course, wow,
Yeah.
talk about the galaxy and all
I
that kind
know.
of stuff.
Well, that's one of the things I want to do is if I was going to, so I'm gonna stay with Star Wars Galaxy 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna finish those out. And there's a couple of others that I might stick with. Like I got the Heritage binder, which is a nice binder.
Heritage is
Uh,
a great set from
mhm.
2004. I think you might. I might have to sell you on the original Chrome. I think it's Chrome Archives from '99.
Yes, I've got the promos for it, but I don't have the set,
It's a
and I've got the
really
sell
nice
sheet.
one.
Yeah.
It's a really nice one. But yeah, if you want to stay in those 90s, I mean, look again at Shadows. Hildebrandt, especially, considering, he's still pumping out great stuff. That's a really lovely set with the
Mm,
story on the back.
I will
So you could,
probably. I probably won't. I'll tell you why now. Not because I've got any disrespect for the
no, no.
Hildebrands at all. It's just that the only kind of bit of extended universe stuff I've done is Dark Empire.
Mm,
So Dark Empire is a lane in and of itself. There's some really beautiful metallic impressions cards that came out of Dark Empire
and Dave
back
Dorman
in
did
the
all those covers, and
exactly.
he'll probably be at C2E2 again. I've had him
Oh,
sign a few of those covers,
I want to get him on
and
here. I want to get him on here. He's done so many Marvel cards over the. I mean, he's what hasn't Dave Dorman done? Let's face
yeah.
it. So I kind of know my lane, and if I was going to go for a particular character, it would be Empire Strikes Back, um, Leia.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, probably Hoth, um, and Millennium Falcon, that middle section outfit. That was if I was going to really, because I think I have to narrow it like that, otherwise, game over. I always go too far.
I
So,
respect the restraint that
so
you show.
this beautiful thing
Mm.
ticks all the boxes for me. Galaxy free, got Leia, although I think that's Return of the Jedi. Yeah, that's Return of the Jedi. And then you've got a nice Empire scene there, and you've got Jabba and the band on the back.
See, and I think there's a lot of
Lovely.
gold in those 90s sets, that they're not so many that it's
Mm,
unreasonable. You've got
mm,
really weird ones like vehicles, which I have a sealed
yeah,
box, but I don't
yeah,
have
yeah.
the individual ones. But they're not so many that you could go back. You get everything from Galaxy through the episode 1 sets, which
Mm,
are wide vision, and then all the offshoots. So you could
yeah.
really, and that's what I'm kind of like. I keep seeing myself kind of trickle back
Mm,
to make sure I have it. And I think now it's just to kind of figure out what do I still need instead of just continually bringing things in. What hole? I just filled a hole in an O-Pee-Chee Empire set that I had one card that I needed. And I'm like, you know what? If you would just gave
mm,
half a brain cell, you could have filled this hole and you'd just been happy. And then there's some other things that I need to, and I'm going, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the 90s that, for Marvel and for Star Wars that
mm.
someone could have some fun there. And, you'll take forever to chase down those promo cards, but
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
all
Here's a
good
question
stuff.
for you. Do you have a Star Wars Galaxy limited edition that came in a plastic kind of Millennium Falcon style box?
I am familiar with it and I have passed on it probably to my peril. But since I
Do you
already
want one?
had, do I want one? I could probably, I
Because I've
wouldn't,
got one upstairs I don't want. Because
well,
that
let me
crosses
put
the
this.
line for me. So
I have to say, how big is it?
oh
That's important.
it's a decent size.
I might decline only because of space. It's just
Okay.
because it's so big.
Yeah.
Um,
It's I mean I wouldn't say it's a whopper. It's probably about
oh
that
yeah.
footprint wise. And then you've
Yeah.
obviously got the height of it as well. So
I'm good. I'm good.
yeah.
There's part of me that
Right.
goes, please take it, but I'm like, it's with the
No,
tins, right?
no. I've been
A
meaning
lot of
to ask
tins.
you, and it's like I'm sure this is people are fascinated. It's like, well, you could have asked Greg this question anytime. Why'd you put it out as content? It's like, well, because I've just happened to be talking to you, and it popped into my head. And I've still got some tins. I've been meaning to send you from the UK release of one of the sequel trilogy. They came out. They bought these three
Hmm.
editions. There's a BB-8 one. There's a Darth Vader one, I think, or Kylo Ren one. There's something else, and you get like a certain number of packs within the tin. So I've had those sat here ready to mail to you for like because they've moved with me as well, but they're
At
still
some
here.
point, we may want to talk about seeing if there's any of these metal cards that I have that you need. If in fact there's any that you're like, oh, I would very much like X, Y, or Z, because I do have a small stack of them.
Oh well, we'll get to it. That's the thing with me. I keep seeing stuff within the Star Wars sphere, and I'm like, oh, what's that? What's that? And I just know with Marvel as well. I just need to keep it. I just need to calm down, boy. I need to keep myself leashed, which is an image our listeners will and viewers now will probably enjoy or be sick in their mouth in equal measure. Um, so we'll celebration. I'm just going to talk about this year's celebration, and then I think we should probably wrap up,
Sure.
and you can go on with your day. And I have to go and I have to go and clean our bathroom, which has just been finished being built, so that we can actually use it. Um,
Always a bonus
Star Wars Celebration this year is in London
at the
in
Excel
two
Center.
months from now. Now you randomly a couple of months back sent me a text and said, "Oh, I'm on the flight to London." And then for the next 3 days, kept sending me texts saying, "Oh, we've just gone for a wonderful walk around by Tower Bridge. Oh, we've just gone for a big meal." And it's like I didn't even know you were coming over. And obviously, I think it was a short-term standby that you came over on, which is why we didn't know you were coming over. Any possible plans or temptation or even affordability to come to Celebration in Europe?
It would have to be no, only because it was interesting. We went over, my wife and I went over for anniversary, and yes, because we fly standby, it was one of those like it could be
Mm,
Paris, it could be London, and we found it was the flights and everything kind of aligned on at once.
yeah.
However, the one thing I have found is like if you're going to do anything by train in your neck of the woods, do it in advance, which is one of the reasons why I think I'll be talking to Mark Newbold of Fantatrax. He's over on more the northwestern side.
Okay.
But if you are planning to go over, you need to get your ducks in a row sooner rather than later, just
Oh yeah.
because the train tickets, if you're gonna, it's Easter weekend. That's the thing that really kills it. Um, have a good day, sir. Son's going off to work.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, if you're planning to do anything else, you need to get your tickets locked up if you want to travel, if you want to do the channel, if you want to go up north and make
Mm,
a go of it. It's very interesting because of the tube system. that London has. And thankfully, we were off on we the Elizabeth line can go all the way from Heathrow all the way. I think can go over to the Excel Center.
That's the new one. Yeah.
That's the new one. And I think they eventually will be retiring the Paddington one, which in some cases is a little bit redundant, but we stayed right at the end of the Paddington line, which was great because then it was like straight shot from the airport back. But yeah, I would say if you're planning to go over, look at that tube, get your Oyster cards on, really get the tube, because for me, the buses were like way over my head. There was too many. They're all in little clumps. And I'm like, I have no idea where you're going. But I think if you get the tube down and you go,
As
look,
someone who
I can
lived
get
there for 20 years, I know how they work now, but I can see how it would be maddening.
there's just a cluster of red buses. They all look really cool, but I have no idea where they're going. But, it takes a little while to get used to that. But what you give yourself the opportunity is, I think tube wise, is like, you don't have to, there's nothing really near Excel Center that's
No,
A, affordable, and B, that's close to anything you want to walk to. But
no.
if you got the tube down, you can be somewhere else
Mm.
and and you're right there at Star Wars
Yeah.
Celebration. So you could save yourself a lot of money, and which is why I wanted to talk like folks like yourself and so forth to go, who had that time, go, look, stay here, 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 and here, and you're
Mm.
going to be great. And then don't worry about, don't sweat the rest of it. Because the first thing anybody did was, as soon as they announced it, we all start like doing the Google map over Excel Center and going, huh, no, 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 no. All right, we're done. But yeah, Easter also kills it because, it's like one of those like,
It's more
yeah,
expensive.
I'm gonna go over by myself on probably one of the biggest holidays of the year and spend a lot of money. And I think your family's just going, really? No. Nice try. Whereas like if it's in, we figure it's coming back to Orlando the following year,
Yeah.
uh, then that makes it a little easier. You got family down there, you can go.
Mm.
But what I would say, to make a long answer to your question, I am happy that it's there because there are so many fans, and I love listening to, the Making Tracks folks when they talk about like going to like Echo Base Live, which was a couple weeks ago, and some of these other cons where you have a lot of the actors, the UK based actors, they're all very, they're all 70s, 80s. They get a lot of delight out of meeting fans, and they were on screen for 3 seconds, but people just love lining up and hearing
Mm.
them talk about a week's worth of work, and they're just going, hey, and they make a good living of it. But I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
they're such a resource. But you have people coming over from Germany, from other places, like they
yeah.
did when we were there for the NFL game. I'm thinking, as we're having a, very close to an English breakfast, here's a bunch of folks, that are lining. I think the Giants and Packers played, and all of a
Okay.
sudden I'm seeing jerseys all over the
Is this at
place. I'm
Wembley?
like, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, some bros came over, and I'm like, no, these people are in, all the jerseys, and they're speaking German, and they are pounding beers down at
Yeah.
like, I gave up trying to drink before 9 a.m. a long time ago. There's a reason for it. I won't go into it here. But, I couldn't believe how many fans of the NFL were, like, these were not US based ones.
Yeah.
These
No.
were folks that were just like, no. And I'm like, we've come a long way from the London Monarchs of the World League of American
Oh,
Football in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Europe.
Absolutely. No. They played the first game in Germany, NFL this year, and they've
Wow.
got two lined up. So there's going to be 5 Europe games next year, 3 in London and 2 in Germany.
That's
And the New
smart.
England Patriots, who are my guys, are going to be playing in Germany. I'm like, mother. But never mind. I can't afford to go to any of them. I mean, I can't do Celebration, unfortunately, even though it's just down the road. I just don't have the coin for it. Um, thank you, world economy. But yeah, the Celebration has been in Europe a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So it is good that comes over here. I mean, I know San Diego Comic Con. I know part of the clue is in the name of it, but it'd be great if something like that did a you know did a trip over the pond, or something. I mean, I know there are cons over here, but we don't tend to get as many of the Marvel folks come over. Whereas with Star Wars, it's blessed that a lot of the actors live here because they filmed and made them in the UK. So I guess
And
you've kind
this,
of got that.
yeah, what the Star Wars Fan Fun Day. You do
Mm.
have some ones over there, and I love hearing them because I think it would be
Mm.
such a different environment. And I think just to meet some of those folks to go,
Mm.
he was talking to somebody who was the fellow who was Captain Nita, who
yes.
Vader chokes, and you going, I've never heard that name. That actor's probably like, like you think of Oliver F. Davies, like I've never heard them do anything other than the 2 or 3 lines. And I thought it was like, it's so enjoyable because like this will be lost to, like once they're unfortunately done and everybody ages out, so this is a really great opportunity for folks to go. And then I think Celebration has gotten big now. If it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's hard as a family person.
Yeah.
Even if it's in your backyard to go, I can't just, the families have to be very, very nice to you and very understanding to go, Dad's going to go away for a few days and play. And, and try to keep it, into a couple of car payments down. But, so it's helpful when also, people that you can maybe like get a Airbnb together with, or you can meet up with. And for me, I spent most of the days at Celebration on the podcast stage, listening to some of people and meeting people that I've only heard. And it was great. I had a great time rather than trying to fight with a bunch of people in an arena. I'll watch that on YouTube, but I go there for the connections, just like, but what's nice to tie it back in, it's like having gone over there now, okay, now we know how to do this. It's less of a mystery. There's still things to learn, but you go, okay, I'd fly into here. I might do this. And then if I'm even thinking about it, I would say, even if you don't intend on going somewhere, get yourself a train ticket. If it's like one of those like $25 tickets or whatever, just get it. And if you don't go, you're out $25. But you have something to kind of eye for, and you can kind of work around it and go, okay, we'll figure that out. And then if nothing else, we had a nice, trip up, because there's a lot of great, territory. You have a castle in your neck of the woods,
Oh, they're all over the place. You throw a rock.
We got them littered about the place, right?
Yeah. They kind of left them standing and kind of died or buggered off or got conquered. So they're all over the place. You can't move for castles around here. Or old churches as well. Norwich, which is where I lived until last year. We're only about 12 miles away from it. It has the highest concentration of churches, I think, of almost any city in the UK. I mean, they're all over the place. And they're all really old as well. There's some from like 12th century.
Oh, yeah. And, we did that day trip. We went out to Dover Cliffs and we went to Leeds Castle and we did Canterbury. And
Leeds Castle isn't in Leeds. It's in Kent. What's that all about? Because Leeds is in Yorkshire. But there's a castle in Kent called Leeds Castle. I don't even know. Anyway, the geography of the UK notwithstanding, next time you come over, we will sup beers together, my friend.
I will enjoy that.
I have randomly, I was hoping, possibly, there's a glimmer of hope that I might have gone over to the US this year to do a con of some sort. And I know the National was in your backyard.
It's coming back through again. Can't
July.
wait.
So there was a very slim hope about that, but I don't know if that's going to happen. So, but who knows? Who knows? Thanks for coming on, Greg. Appreciate this. Next time, I'm on your podcast, so get your questions sharpened, and we'll do that sooner rather than later. But yeah. Do you want to sign off the podcast, or do you want me to? Do you remember how to? I always say to people, what we say at the end of our podcast, and they go, no, I've forgotten. Do you remember what we say at the end of our podcast?
If it's still the same, it would be enjoy collecting.
Perfect, my friend. Perfect. Thanks for listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast. Tasting notes and visuals for each episode can be found on our Facebook page. We're on most social media at the MCC Pod, and you can also watch the video of each episode recording on our YouTube channel. Leave us a voicemail via our home on anchor.fm/MCCP. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms. Please take a second to subscribe, like, and review our show wherever you find us. Our Facebook community is at MCCW Marvel Card Collectors Worldwide and MMC Marvel Masterpieces Collectors. The great music we use on our audio version is called Rocket Power by Kevin MacLeod. Thanks to the collectors, artists and creators who support the Marvel Cards Fan Collective. We'll see you next time, and remember, it's a small hobby but a fun one. Make mine Marvel and enjoy collecting.